What is the Prima Materia that alchemists speak of? Can such a state of undifferentiation be even articulated, let alone defined? We need to emphasize that the Prima Materia, that state of chaos, or in alchemical terms, the state of nigredo, is conceived in both anthropological psychological as well as in cosmological terms. This shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone, as we all experience chaos in our world simply because it is an aspect of our soul. It is ever present and does not belong to simply the beginnings of the universe or anterior to our universe. It remains with us at all times, albeit at the furthermost boundaries of our existence. Chaos is not so much an empty space that is filled with matter or things, or even necessarily a vacuum, but is in a sense something intermediate. As described by Leonard Mueller, chaos is a tangible nullity. Regardless of the fact that we are fully embodied beings in the cosmic order, chaos is still ever present. As we will see, it can be displaced, but never eliminated. Carl Jung noted that the state of chaos and nigredo that is experienced by the individual results from a collision of the conscious and the unconscious of the subject. From this collision arises a restlessness and a disorientation, very much akin to the aporia we discussed in an earlier video that described this state as a precondition for theurgic activity. I've heard some rumblings and a few misgivings from viewers regarding the seeming over-reliance on definitions and etymology in my videos, as opposed to the more experiential outlook, which would mock the pedantic exercises of articulating these emotional states into concepts and words. There is certainly the great risk of throwing out words and pretending as if we've said something concretely about a subject, when in fact nothing can concretely be said or thought about it, since this arises, of course, from a different aspect of the human soul. Let me begin by saying, yes, I wholeheartedly agree. And forgive me for this excruciatingly banal statement that I'm about to make. Words are simply words. But sometimes, words are more than words. Wisdom, along with real knowledge, is not derived from books, but from how that knowledge is applied and integrated into the being of the individual. If you've read 1,000 books on esotericism and theurgy and alchemy, I commend your stamina and your thirst for knowledge. But that is no measure of your aptitude for spiritual development. You can remain an ignoramus or a complete fool, and not the good kind, mind you, even though you've read the entire bibliography beginning to end. Reading can be done passively, ignorantly, and stupidly. But remember this, reading is a form of ascesis. It is an exercise just like ritual actions such as fasting and yoga. You may laugh, but this is entirely true. When you read a text, you read the words, the structures they form in sentences, the meanings they convey. But this is all outward phenomena. The outward display of the message, the smiling face of the symbol. Words are symbols, and they contain particles of meaning that can transform you if only you read the text esoterically, with a clear eye and a sound heart, and aim to incorporate the inexhaustible essence behind the words. Why else would Hermes Thoth be the god of scribes and the psychopomp of the theurgist and alchemist, if books were simply tools to be employed and words did not in some manner embody the things to which they referred? If we look into the etymology of a word, we seek to add meat to the bones, to extinguish or perhaps supplement our own ill-informed understanding of the word with texture and a variegation of emotionality and association. We come to realize that some words are linked to others through a subtle thread, and then we begin to weave the web of psychic complexes which interlaces the human soul. So why even bother reading mythology? Are these simply tales of a poet's imagination that seeped into the cultural imagination and grew wings through the creative process? Or is there something deeper in the reading of such works? Why should someone interest themselves in mythology if their main concern is theurgy? Isn't it enough to burn the right incense and intone the appropriate prayers? Mythology, far from being an interesting story fabricated by purely human interests, speaks to us about the nature and attributes of the gods. And every cosmogonical or theogonical account of the birth of the cosmos and its gods is an exploration of their ideology and their divine attributes, as well as their ontological status, along with their horizontal relations to one another in that hierarchy of being. Every myth has something to teach the theurgist. We are ever learning, and must never stagnate, since life and growth is flux and change. This aids us in the work if we approach it with humility. Hesiod's Theogony begins as follows. In truth, first of all, chasm came to be, and then broad-breasted earth, the ever-immovable seat of all the immortals who possess snowy Olympus's peak and murky Tartarus in the depths of the broad-paved earth, and Eros, who is the most beautiful among the immortal gods, the limb-melter. He overpowers the mind and the thoughtful counsel of all the gods and of all human beings in their breasts. From chasm, or chaos, Erebus and black night came to be, and then ether and day came forth from night, who conceived and bore them after mingling in love with Erebus. Earth first of all bore starry sky, equal to herself, to cover her on every side, so that she would be the ever-immovable seat for the blessed gods. And she bore the high mountains, the graceful haunts of the goddesses, nymphs who dwell on the wooded mountains. And she also bore the barren sea, seething with its swell, Pontus, all of them without delightful love. And then, having bedded with sky, she bore deep eddying ocean and Coeus and Crius and Hyperion and Iapetus and Thea and Rhea and Themis and Mnemosyne and golden-crowned Phoebe and lovely Tethys. After these, Kronos was born, the youngest of all, crooked-counselled, the most terrible of her children, and he hated his vigorous father. In Hesiod's Theogony, primordial chaos reigns in the beginning. In this version of the story, it is also translated as chasm. But chaos is protista, first of all, which means that it even precedes the proton, which is the first. It therefore has no parents, but exists as a featureless being. Chaos is also said to come to be. However, this coming to be all transpires in what is considered a timeless moment, which characterizes mythical or archaic time. It does not express itself in duration, something similar to Henri Bergson's idea of durée, something that you and I experience on a moment-to-moment. Chaos is the absolute limit of the cosmic process of unfoldment. There is nothing beyond it. By uttering the word chaos, or seeing it written in Hesiod's account in the Theogony, it initiates the cosmogonical process and acts as a bridge between non-existence and existence. It is the word uttered that sets about the process of cosmogenesis. Prior to that, the pre-cosmic conception was that of a great abyss or chasm. As Bosanich observes, the Sanskrit term ka, translated as opening, gap, or hollow, and its derivative akasha, which means space, define purely principial space, from and in which cosmic manifestation occurs. There are terrifying howls of windstorms that ceaselessly rage in the vast insubstantiality of chaos. The Chaldeans and the oracles speak of the Eumenides and Erinyes that roar in Tartarus. Perhaps these are the echoes of the winds of non-being that lie beneath this region into the open abyss of chaos. It is not like an unformed mass that passively requires the restrictions of order to confine it and mold it. Therefore, it is very much distinct from the notion in Genesis of the primordial waters, the tehom, the abyss or deep of a vast primordial ocean. Without chaos, no generation can occur. However, it is not a source of generation or manifestation itself. In order for manifestation and generation to occur, one needs Eros. Eros then becomes the mechanism, and later on works the material of the matrix of creation, whom we call Gaia, in order to create creatures. Gaia can only exist within chaos, simply because nothing else can possibly exist in this cosmic state. The seeds of creation and potentiality is contained within Gaia, not within chaos. Let us also clarify that this chaos is not a precursor to our understanding of eternity. In this cosmogony, we have three divinities that act in concord with one another: Chaos, Eros, and Gaia. Remember that these deities are not created or produced from procreation. They are themselves mechanisms for creation. They are essentially the creation of procreation. Chaos, later on, divides into two aspects of itself, Erebus and Night, which represent the male and female duality that resides within it. As cosmogony proceeds with the birth of the gods, chaos descends downward, or cosmogony emerges upward, however you'd like to visualize it. It is effectively being displaced, and chaos becomes positioned prior or underneath Tartarus. Simply because it is less differentiated than Tartarus. The primordial roots of the cosmic tree reach down into the depths of Tartarus and stretch out no further because they cannot encroach the darkness of chaos. Chaos is still ever present, but has become bounded to and by the things that have been created since the cosmos emerged. As chaos functions in a spatial manner, Chronos is the equivalent pre-cosmic time principle. Chronos is eternal, and as we will see in a later video when we explore Pythagoras' teacher Thucydides and his cosmotheological articulation, Chronos is the bridge by which mythical or archaic time becomes actual time that we understand, what we consider measurable time. In Thucydides' version of the Hesiodic theogonical myth, Chronos, also known as time, is the original creator of world order. To conclude this brief video, the best way to imagine chaos is as the precursor of the substrate of the Chora of Plato, spoken about in the Timaeus. The Chora can be seen as a vessel or receptacle, the hypodoke by which the world comes into existence. It is the alchemical vase, or alembic, in which the alchemist performs his or her operations. As Gregory Shaw observes, every theurgic rite had as its necessary element the Chora. Now, the Chora is not definable or even necessarily thinkable. So imagine, if you can, a productive black hole from which the cosmos emerges. Chaos is equally unthinkable, and here I see a helpful analogy of the micro and macrocosms. Contrary to most expectations, the Theurgy is strictly an assent to the demiurge. This Chora receives and also reveals the eternal measures, the metra idea of the demiurge. Iamblichus is quoted at length. He who propitiates all these divine powers and offers to each gifts that are pleasing and as similar to them as possible will remain secure and free from error, since he has completed, perfect and whole, the receptacle of the divine choir. This is the way, moment by moment, that infinitesimal moment, somewhere beyond thinking and more reminiscent of dreaming, that the imperceptible womb of the cosmos is erupting every moment to create and recreate the world. It is this pillar of creative folding and unfolding that the theurgist seeks to embody and harmonize within and without himself, in order to participate in the divine energia of the creative process of the demiurge. Take care for now.